Yeah, roll 20. Yeah, I tried doing roll 20 for a little bit. I didn't get into it too much. Just it was a lot of setup. I didn't have time for it.
Discord has a bot you can download too for rolling dice in the
Oh,
chat, and it'll
oh
give you
really?
it'll give you the equations.
I feel like I'm like an old geezer. I don't understand technology.
I didn't know till Oliver told me, but
But so I don't know how roll 20 or any other like the digital tabletops of the dice rollers work. As far as like, does it do something automatic when you roll a natural one or a natural 20?
I mean, it doesn't like tell you what it does.
Oh,
Basically,
okay.
Roll20 is like a tabletop where you can
You can hide
download
them. Yeah.
images
Okay.
and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
then you basically play digitally.
Oh, in response to my comment about rolling behind the screen, he said, "Yeah, roll 20 because you can hide them." Yeah, definitely. I would suggest doing that at least for a while. But basically, you take if you want to know how deadly your creature is, you take the players hit points, and then you throw the other stuff in there. So you have the players hit points. Um, here's let me go back up and edit this. Let me give you the full thing. So if you're like, I just want the equation to plug in the variables. Hit points.
Pardon me.
I need parentheses around these. General equation. You're gonna have hit points divided by the damage output. And then you're going to have that, which gave us the 4 in the example above there. So the hit points divided by the damage output, and then you're going to add your. This is the part where it gets a little bit annoying. You're like, whoa, where'd that 2 come from? Trust me, it needs to be there. 2 plus. Oh, sorry. It's times. I'm getting ahead of myself. Times 2 minus your hit percentage in decimal. Hit percentage. So what that does is it gives you, in this example, I'm gonna erase this. Just trust me. Plug that number in. Equals your round score. So that 2 minus hit percentage, if you look at like in our example above, it takes 4 rounds if everyone hits every time and rolls average damage. So 4 plus, we need to add in the rounds that they're going to miss, which is 55%.
Right.
4 plus the misses, which is 4 times.
Oh, I understand now. Okay, so the parentheses is the misses.
The same as same as saying 2 minus sorry.
So I'm old-fashioned. What I do is, since I'm improv for the most part, sometimes I'll fudge numbers. I will add 2 HP. I will cut HP out. I will increase the armor class of some creatures. I will decrease the attack damage. Sometimes I will, if an enemy has 3 attacks, I won't use a specific attack if I know that the enemy or the players are lower in health. And it really just depends on how the players react. Like I said, it's a big part as far as if they're enjoying it, if they're having fun. But as far as like really custom monsters, sometimes I'll take stats from other creatures or different abilities that I enjoy. I'll add them into different enemies that I think would be beneficial if there was some sort of like parasite that was infecting different enemies, such as like goblins or orcs, as a generic example. you could have the stats of a orc buffed up with an extra ability added on top of that because of these parasites. They could be extraterrestrial or alien or whatever the case might be. So, figured out?
Yeah, there was a step missing.
Oh, okay.
I was like, I have all this stuff planned out. Once you figure out stuff like this, it's the same. You just like put it into a spreadsheet or a little quick calculator app, and then you go, give me my round score. Boom, go.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I was like, wait, how did I wait? So say mathematically, if you say 4 plus, like we're gonna go with our example, right? We determined they're gonna take 4 rounds if they hit every time and roll average. If you take 4 plus all the misses, which is gonna be the number of rounds times an extra 55%.
Right.
Right?
You plug this into an Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
If you kind of like put all that out, these are going to come out to be the same. So if we were to, let me pull up my calculator here. Calculator. Okay. So 4 times 0.55. 2.2. You add 4 to it, you get 6.2 rounds. So that's the left side. This is 2.2. This is 4, 6.2. If you multiply,
which you have listed up top, so 6.2 rounds.
Yep. 4 by 1.55.
55.
You end up with 6.2.
Oh, that makes sense.
These are mathematically equal.
Oh, okay.
And so when you write it out like this hit point damage output times 2 minus hit percentage, this is the 4 hit points over damage output times 2 minus the hit percentage. That's all it is.
That's pretty fancy. I would have never thought of that.
So, yeah.
So you can plug that into a spreadsheet and basically just start typing away, and then it'll generate over and over.
Yep, and so you can say, well, what if I made the total collection of monsters have 125 hit points? What's my new score? How tough are the monsters?
And then it basically pumps it out for you.
Right.
Oh, that makes way more sense.
And the cool thing about doing it this way is it always puts the difficulty, which basically the 7 is like a difficulty score, right? If it takes your characters 7 rounds to kill the monsters, they have a difficulty score. Don't confuse that with the book difficulty score or challenge rating or whatever. That's why I'm calling it a round score. I'm not even trying to...
I personally never liked the challenge rating system.
Yeah,
it was just confusing all in all, and then it really depended on how you played the monsters. If you purely did basic attacks, it completely changes, how things worked. So, like I said, that's why I kind of fluked things here and there, as long as, things are balanced in my head. And that's just my style. But, because I'm assuming if you change the challenge rating, or if you pick monsters that are equal to your challenge rating and you always use their strongest attacks and you strategically pinpoint the weakest players, it's going to be over quick.
Mm-hmm.
It won't really be, a challenge for them if you just wipe them off the board. So with this system here, it's also beneficial that that you've got equal footing ground and you can adjust things here and there. So it's definitely beneficial to know this average information.
And again, the coolest part about and why I use this, I'm just gonna, I have to brag a tiny bit. This is self-developed. I could not find...
No wonder I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. I was like, where's this information?
I couldn't find any information. I looked and I looked and I looked, and they're just like, well, pay attention to this, and if you look at the Dungeon Master's Guide, it has these things. I'm like, no!
Oh, okay. Well, now I don't feel as dumb. I'm like, where is this equation in the book? I have not seen this anywhere.
Yeah.
So you created this?
Yes,
wow,
I did.
That's impressive. So, I think your work is overpaying you for what you're doing at work.
They should pay me to run D&D.
You're half of the time you're coming up with spreadsheets for D&D. That makes
No, I don't. I do this if I like when I'm on lunch break. And
Okay.
stuff like that.
If anybody's listening from the company, he
got
does
too
this
much-
on lunch.
Yeah, this is what I do on lunch. So,
Joel doesn't eat. He crunches numbers. Yeah, that's what he does. Oh,
Well,
that's impressive. I would have never come up with that at all.
well, if there are mathematicians watching this, I'm sorry. I know that you've been cringing the entire time because,
A lot of unknown terminology.
well, not just terminology. It's well, I guess it's okay. The whole like 4 rounds is 45%.
Right.
Is not actually
It's fudged.
accurate as far as if you're looking at probabilities and rolls.
Gotcha.
But it's so close, and in experience, which is what this is for, it works so well that shut up.
This is like he's gonna go on a tangent. It's gonna be good, and then he just shut it down.
No, it just
It works because Joel did it, and that's why it works.
No,
Apparently.
so it's
Well, I mean, obviously it's been tested and
yeah.
it works.
This is what I use. If you guys run into like a hailstorm and you have to deal with damage and all that stuff, this is what I use to calculate how hard to make it, how much damage to deal to you guys. And obviously, in your and again, this is a unique way to use something like this: is weather effects that actually affect the party. You can make anything that affects the party in a way that involves hit points and AC.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So
You can make it a minor effect or something that's climatic as far as what they're gonna do. It's gonna really affect these guys. It's gonna be a big deal. Or you can scale it down to where it's just a nuisance.
Yep.
So, no, that makes total sense.
And like I've used the first time I used this, it was actually not even for creatures, which is part of how I was able to put the logic together and like add numbers to the logics.
Oh,
It's because I used it for an encounter where there were no creatures. It was just it was like an
Natural
Indiana
effects.
Jones style temple crawl through,
Oh, okay.
and I needed to know like how the whole thing might wear down the players.
Right, you don't want to be in room 3 and these people are already ready to take a long rest and die.
Yeah, and the Dungeon Master's Guide does have some interesting and useful information in there. It's not like they don't have any info.
Right. I do find 5e lacking in traps, sadly.
Yeah, there isn't a whole lot about traps. There's a small section that is useful and should be read.
3.0 and 3.5 was loaded with different traps and stuff like that you could use.
And
so.
the math system made those things easier to deal with, which is why I kind of went back to something that was a little bit more similar to the, was it Taco or Thak?
Yeah.
Whatever. I read it. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Right.
the
That's everybody.
Two hit AC, 0. And that's part of the reason I decided to go back towards that direction to come up with something that I could just quickly plug numbers in and get my stats.
Slowly pushing you towards Pathfinder. Do you like math? Do you like complexity?
No, that's why I made the simple plug and play.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
sure it was like
There you go.
kind of a pain to make, but
How long did it take you to make that?
I don't know. I didn't like sit down and just make it. I thought about ways to do it, and then realized if I could really, I was working with SQL databases and making relational databases, and I thought, I wonder if I could make the stats for balancing relational. And all that means is you take a stat from one thing and you plug it in to the other. Well, in SQL, you take the ID from one row and you make it a variable in another table. But here you would take the target hit points and sorry, there's something like noise on the wall. You take the target hit points and then you put in your damage, your hit percentage, and then you get their score. So it's always in relation to the conflict. Where if you look at like CR in the Dungeon Master's Guide and you look at like AC and level, here it's like, well, you should have like the CR matches a party of 4 at this level. Well, like, I don't know.
It's very vague.
Yeah, and I mean it does. I mean it works because it's. I mean it's in the book. They did a lot of hard. They have a ton of hard math behind all that.
Right.
And then they tweak it manually after the math. But
I just don't think it was explained very well in the book.
yeah, and it's.
I mean, the
not
grid is
immediately-
there, the tables is there, and then there's a short description on it. But
Yeah. So if I take the player's hit points and I take the monster's damage and the monster's hit percentage against the players, then I get the player's round score because they were the hit points I used. Now if I use the monster's hit points and the player's damage output and the player's hit percentage against the monster, now I have the monster's round score.
you basically have a 40% chance to win against this creature. Is what you're just breaking it into percentages for the most part.
Well, the round score is how many rounds it would take them to kill it.
Oh, okay.
How many rounds it would take whoever's doing the damage to kill whoever had the target hit points.
Right.
And if you want to make so
in a sense, this could change round per round.
yeah, if you wanted to do it round per round.
I mean, if you wanted to get real technical.
Yeah, you could do it round per round if you wanted to. And actually, I would be interested. I don't know how to do this, but I would be interested in writing a VB macro that you could plug in, because I know you can plug in macros to like Roll20 and stuff like that. Basically.
Right.
And as long as you can make the variables for the player health available to the macro, to use in the macro, and I'm using all the words wrong because I don't know what I'm talking about. Then you could probably have target round scores.
Oh yeah,
and see who's getting closer to dying.
Yeah.
And see how big because ideally in a fair fight, your target rounds score is going to be about the same on both sides, and it's going to drop about the same rate through the fight.
Right.
Now, if one starts dropping way faster, like when a character dies, that damage output is just tanked for the party.
Yeah, so you can
that
lose a
round
big
score
chunk.
drops like whatever percentage.
They would have added. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yep. So the very first thing.
Do you have the chat on your phone, by the way?
Oh, I do. Oh, yeah. So.
Yeah, that makes total sense now that you've explained it.
I pull the chat up here. So yeah, there's a D&D for everybody.
Yeah, this is like custom, really, really advanced mob design, I suppose, or like, I guess it would be. Is it mob design or is it just combat in general?
It's super general. I was talking the first time I used it was for traps, but I also used it for this is the only way I made it through an adventure where our players were on a airship. There aren't airship stats.
No, there's not.
So if you want to figure out how many rounds you want the weather to take before it destroys the airship.
Yeah, that would probably be beneficial.
I'm like, how do I do this?
Yeah.
You could just decide they have 7 rounds to reach to land before the airship is destroyed.
Right.
And that's totally valid.
A lot of times when you make those rules, though, the players will come back at you and say, no, it only takes 7 rounds to do this because we've done this before. That's where stuff kind of gets like sticky. So this system works really well.
But
so we've got the fantastic custom
it gives you can take that home. It's party favor. Or whether anything that affects
the party
hit points, has a damage output, and if there's like a save. I mean, and that hit percentage, if you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this for gale force winds on the edge of a cliff. Your target hit points of your players, they have 100 hit points. Your damage output is 2 every time it hits a player, so that's all in all. If it's going to hit all players, that's a party of 4, 8 damage per round. Plus 2 minus your hit percentage. Is there a save? Okay, so the save is like 15. Great, so that's a 25% hit percentage. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Now you've determined how many rounds it's going to take for that wind to wear your characters down.
Right. Exactly.
without any healing potions and things like that.
Right. Yeah, there's obviously other effects that'll take into consideration,
yeah.
but this is a good starting point.
And even if you're sure that your characters are going to use healing potions, you can just add that to their hit points when you do this calculation.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
It's how long will it take to wear down this many hit points?
Right.
It's a really nice multi-purpose equation.
Mm-hmm. So custom math equations for, I guess you would call that a general.
It's a general use.
Yeah, general use. We touched on how to handle players when they're bored.
So one thing that I really like to do for new players, and I did this for the first few games that I had, and I do this for myself sometimes. If I'm not super familiar, I will probably do this before we play our game next because I was a little bit unprepared for our last game. But for first-time DMs, for your new players, make them quick cards. I call them quick cards. It's just a little reference card. You've seen them in lots of games where there's a bunch of actions that players can take. Board games have them. They're like the quick action guides in a lot of RPG video games. Basically, you just take a flashcard and you write down the basic actions.
Your move action, free action, standard action, and I think that's it, right?
D&D Ranger spell cards, yeah, those are great too. I love the spell cards. I haven't splurged to get them all yet, but they are awesome.
Trying not to, because I would buy them all.
Yeah, so the quick cards are for the players, the new players. This is they are nice, but
they're easy too.
The quick cards made a huge difference when we had a bunch of new players in one of our games. So we had a lot of players from our youth group at our church actually that were really interested in playing D&D. So we're like, yeah, we'll run games with you, and we made them these quick cards. Session 0, perfect time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That just has move, and then they can write in whatever their movement is. For
like
their
30
class,
feet,
30 or 25 feet. That's pretty much it. So you can move this many feet, or if you're using a grid system, I used a grid system for the first time I played, ran the game with new players. I used a grid system. It's like, hey, you can move 4 squares.
Yeah, 4
squares,
3
squares,
5 squares, or whatever it is. 'Cause each square is 5 feet. So
yeah, usually. And I honestly, for the gnomes or whatever, I just ignored the fact that they could only move 25 feet. I said, you can move 3 squares.
Mm-hmm.
That's, it was easier for him. And then you can do an attack. Move and attack are the big things that they're going to want to do. And then if you want to, you're going to have to kind of gauge where your people are at, how technically minded they are. You can go over just basics of like using cover and readying an action.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it way more exciting. So if they can hide behind a rock and pop up, fire an arrow, and hide back behind the rock, that's way more exciting than I shoot the goblin. Oh, what else do you do? Well, I don't really want to go anywhere, so... Right.
And all that...
I guess I'm done.
That information can be found in the player's handbook as well, as far as full cover, half cover, partial cover, all that stuff that's listed in there. There's different effects that you can do to people, and all of that's towards like the back of the book. I like to push for holding at times too.
Yeah, holding. Yep.
Yeah, so you can basically say, I'm not going to shoot until I see the enemy, and then as soon as that situation becomes applicable, then you can jump to that player and be like, you waited until, you wanted to see the enemy to fire, now go ahead and make an attack roll. It's just different stuff like that.
So the challenge with especially the beginning encounters, it can really change the dynamics.
Yes.
The challenge that I've encountered with holding is even a lot of players who have played for like a year or more that we play with don't quite understand how the mechanic works. And it's important to do it right, because otherwise you're just taking your turn later. So the most important and game-changing piece for our groups has been, if you hold your action, you don't get a reaction. And you can't change what you decide to do.
Right.
Like I'm gonna keep an eye out on the other side of this rock, and when I see that goblin pop out, I'm readying my action. I'm just gonna let the arrow fly. Ranger spells and all that stuff. Yeah, and that's a perfect use for it. Getting the area of effect, perfect. But a lot of players will go, oh, he didn't pop up yet. Okay, well, I'm gonna take a swipe at this guy as he runs past me. No, can't do that. You use your reaction as you declare that you're readying.
Yeah, so you get another full round before you decide.
You can't react. You can't do anything else. If something else happens, you can't go like, oh well, I didn't take my action, so instead I'm gonna shoot that guy instead.
That doesn't work that way.
No.
Once you are committed for that round to make a reaction, you don't get to do anything until next round. So.
Yep.